A teenage girl from Mumbai wants to give her mother what she feels her mother lacks in life, namely a life and a man. Sounds interesting, right? Because it is. Operation Mom is a very interesting, fun book to read where you have this teenager doing all sorts of things, being on dating sites, creating a profile for her mother. So I'm really hopeful that this interview will be as interesting, as fun as the book. I'm sure you're going to find it very nice and helpful as well. We'll see how. So today I have with me Reenita Malhotra Hora, who is, of course, you can understand from the description, she's an author, but she's also a businesswoman and she's a marketing expert. She's worked in media, communications, tech, wellness. She's done a lot of work. So she also does podcasts. And where writing is concerned, she's written 7 books, fiction, non-fiction. She's written a lot of blog posts and done write-ups for a number of publications. So thank you so much, Reenita, for taking out the time for this interview today. And okay, so let's just start with your journey overall. So you've donned many hats. What has your journey been like really? And what do you consider the defining moments of this journey?
Well, Ronika, firstly, thank you for this interview today. I'm thrilled to speak with you about my background and about my book, Operation Mom. Um, Thank you for having me on your show. The journey has been a long one. The journey has had many points along the way. The journey has had flips and turns and twists and, all sorts of things. Um, so sometimes it's hard for me to sort of begin to think of where it all began and focus on the different stops along the way. Suffice it to say, I've had a long time career as a broadcast journalist. I worked on public radio. I worked on commercial radio, Bloomberg, which was very specific, financial news. I have worked as a head of marketing in most recently SRI, which is Stanford Research Institute, Silicon Valley's pioneer research institute, which really, marketing is an interesting role because marketing really is about storytelling, right? And it's about how you best tap into the style of storytelling
Mhm.
to build audiences for your product, for your service, etc. And in between that and sort of my journalism career, um, I worked for audio tech, companies. So again, it was in my space because I had come from the broadcast side, um, but it was tech. And my area of expertise is once again building the content, creating the content, marketing it, and building audiences. So storytelling has been pretty much what I have done my entire life. Sort of
Mhm.
going back into sort of my old career before sort of my past life, as I call it, before any of this, I had an Ayurveda business, which is quite different from,
Mhm.
anything. But that also involved storytelling on a very basic level because people don't really know what it is or understand what it is or, you know, and I was living outside of India. So more than anything else, I was an ambassador of Ayurveda, is what I used to call myself loosely at the time. And in fact, 4 of my books are about Ayurveda. My nonfiction books, I've got 5 nonfiction books that I've written. 4 of them are about Ayurveda. So that's pretty much typecasts me into that category, if you will. Um, More recently, I decided mid pandemic actually to sort of quit my day job and focus full time on my creative projects, which are a combination of my books and my podcast and audio shows. I've got uh, 2 or 3 different kinds of podcasts that I work on. Some of them are one of them is in development, the others are running, and they all involve fiction in some way, shape, or form because I have decided that that is really my true love. What happens in my fictional world is much more interesting than what happens in my real world. And so I'm trying to keep it that way. So, two of my projects, Shadow Realm and soon to be Operation Mom, are audio projects, podcasts that are based upon books that I wrote. And the True Fiction Project is my regular bi-monthly podcast, which really is a series in which I interview people. I'll interview you because you've got a great story. Then I have a roster of fiction writers who listen to that interview, are inspired by something from it, and create a fictional
Mm-hmm.
piece based upon it. So, and then
Yeah.
the episode actually pieces the whole thing together so that we can explore the journey from nonfiction to fiction, unscripted to scripted, if you will. So, that's my journey, and it's continuing. What can I say?
Yeah. So this journey that you're talking about and your love, your passion for fiction. So this book, Operation Mom, which is about this teenager who feels that her mother has lost her spark in life. Yeah, and she wants to find that spark back, and not just that spark. She wants to find a man for her mother because her mother is single now. So what was your experience of writing this kind of a story, of writing this young adult tale now?
Yes, that's a great question. Okay, it's fiction, firstly. I should really say that, specify it, underscore it. I have no experience with a single mother. I have no experience with trying to find my mother a man or, a date. None of that. My experience as a teen myself was in Mumbai,
Mhm.
where I am right now. I grew up in Mumbai. Of course, that was long before the genesis of this particular book or story. But when I was writing it and when I was conceptualizing the story, I was very much in my teenage head, you know, in terms of the places I used to go to, the places I would frequent, what I would do, and sort of my general annoyance with my parents and mom specifically, because, what daughter is not annoyed with her mother in her teens? I think that's a universal phenomenon that exists everywhere. When I was writing the book, I actually had my own preteen daughter. Actually, she was in her early teenage years. Yeah, at that she wasn't preteen. She was actually a teenager by then. So I was definitely facing some of that angst, but from the point of view of a mother. Now, of course, I was not a single mother, and I was not living in Mumbai at that point. But a lot of the anecdotes, a lot of the behavior, if you will, a lot of the relationships between the different characters are inspired by situations from my real life. You
Mhm.
know, my husband and my son will make this joke about how when you have sort of three generations of the women in my family in the same room, notably my daughter, myself, and my mother, it's just too much for anybody to handle. And they can't take it. So there's a lot of that dysfunction that goes on. It leads to a lot of comedy. And it's something that I have fun with. And I certainly had fun sort of extrapolating from there as I created the situations which went into this particular story. So, it's fun writing fiction because although some of it, a lot of it, can be inspired and derived from real life, you have license to twist and turn and, just like turn things topsy-turvy because it's a fictional world.
But a lot of the stuff in your book is quite relatable. I could think back to my teenage years, and I've visited Mumbai a number of times because my mother's side of the family, yeah. So my maternal grandparents and my maternal uncle and aunt, they live there. So I've been to Mumbai a number of times, and then I could relate to some of the places that you talked about. So it was fun to read. That's why, because I could connect to a number of elements, and also the characters are really realistic and pretty. pretty engaging, I would say. Some of them are quite intriguing. So, which is your favorite one? Is what I'd like to
Oh
know.
my gosh. That is such a hard question to answer because I think I'm in love with every single character,
They're all yours.
in that story. Um, and that's a question actually that, a bunch of people have asked me, which is your favorite character? But I don't know how to answer it. I identify with all of them on different levels, in different ways. And that's the other thing about fiction is, I'll be asked the question, so those characters, were they inspired by true people? Is that your mom you're talking about? Is that, and yes, they're inspired by true people,
Yeah.
but no one character in the
Mhm.
story is exactly like one character from my real life. And if anything, what I do is take bits and pieces and sort of put them together into this new fictional form, which I have a lot of fun doing, um, because it gives me the allowance to almost create the perfect character or the perfect character with a whole set of flaws that existed in different people, but now exist in one person in my book. I love Ela and Veena's free spiritedness, right?
Mhm.
Ela is a true free spirit. Veena, her mom, although she's this uptight mother and she she annoys her daughter and whatever, she's got these rules and regulations, whatever it is, at heart, she's a free spirit,
Mhm.
right? It's just that she's been through life and she can see that her daughter is perhaps where she was.
Mhm.
And what she's thinking, what's going on in her head is, let me just save you the angst. I've made those mistakes. So why not just, instead of you repeating and making all those mistakes all over again, or not all over again, but you making those mistakes, let's just cut to the chase. And, I can help you out here. You don't have to make the same mistakes that I made in life. But of course, not going to have any of it, right?
Yeah.
So Veena is controlling, but underneath it, she's a free spirit. And I love the free spiritedness of both of those characters. I absolutely love the crazy, zany characters that are Dipali and Auntie Malika. Okay. And so you've sort of got your match. You've got like Veena and her floozy best friend. You've got Ela and her floozy best friend, right? So, and I think it's the craziness of the Dipalis and the Malikas of the world that really keep us sane, or
Right.
just keep us, if not sane, then insane, because I think our sanity comes from insanity. Um, so I like, it's a very female forward novel. I mean, the men, it does have men in the story, JJ, Dave, but it's almost like they're reduced to the sidelines,
Yes.
which I just have fun with that. So.
You've named all the women as characters you really like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also love Fizz, from the other Parsi colony, because he's just so this typical cantankerous, aged Bawa man who is just will not have any nonsense. And, the girls really sort of like, what is this? Where did we land ourselves? Who is this guy? Does he have a different, dating profile? Um, and I also love what we now call the pigeon man. In the book, he's not called the pigeon man, but this is Rahul G at the Gateway of India, who's this creative romantic who likes to scare pigeons into shock. I mean, it is such a ridiculous, you know, uh, just
Yeah.
setting and situation. But I have to say that this was inspired by a friend of my husband's who I met in the early years. And it was kind of crazy because, I distinctly remember when I met him, he had this girlfriend who he was hiding under his trench coat. And I was like, what is this? Who is this crazy guy? What is he doing? And that is an image that just stuck in my head, and remained there through the years. And then reemerged here. So of course here he doesn't have a girlfriend under his coat, but he's wearing that coat in the middle of the noonday Mumbai heat, as he's going to talk to the pigeons. So friends of mine and I have come to refer to him as the pigeon man. He's not referred to that in the book, but
Yeah. But it's interesting how snippets from your life can really make way into your story. And I think that happens with like all writers. Yeah, you take stuff from life and then put it into your fiction. So that's another level of fun, and like you said, you really enjoy fiction. But since you've also written non-fiction, I'd like to ask you this question: when you make a comparison between fiction and non-fiction, what do you find the positive aspects of each? What do you like about fiction, and what do you like about non-fiction that's not true for fiction, is what I mean.
Right. Absolutely. So, starting with the fiction, and I think I've already said this in different words, is I
Yeah.
get total license to really be creative and create. And, you know, editors will say there are rules. There are still rules that you need to adhere to. You need to create the set of rules. For example, I'm writing a fantasy fiction series. And the question that keeps coming back to me is like, what are the rules of the magic? What are the rules of the real world versus, the magical world and the fantasy world? What can happen and can't happen? And then how do you create within that? So there are some so-called rules. I'm really reluctant to use the word rules because that just kills the joy. um, but I really get to do what I want in fiction, which probably is something that I would never get to do in my real life, in the entirety of my real life. However many days I end up living, long or short, I will never be able to perhaps do all the things that I can do in my stories. And that's what's fascinating and fun about fiction, and why I have decided that from here to the rest of my days, it's all about the fiction. Having said that, you're right. I have written some nonfiction, and what I enjoy about it is that it's almost easier to write. Now, I got to be careful as I say that. I'm not saying that it's easy to write nonfiction, but to me, the way I approach it is very much about having a very clear outline. You know exactly what you are going to write. It's almost like, when you were doing a term paper in college or something like that, right?
Yeah.
You plan it, you outline it, you know exactly what's going to go into each section, and then it becomes a fill in the blanks exercise,
Right.
right? With the books, my nonfiction books, that is, five of them that I have written, that was very much my approach, which made it easy and enjoyable.
Right.
Again, I'm going to, easy may not be, the exact word, the right word. That being said, there is one more nonfiction piece of work that is in me, and that is actually I am working on these days, um, which is very personal to me. And this is called Ace of Blades. It is the memoir of my father, who passed away recently, a year or so ago. And he really has an important history, which I feel very strongly needs to be documented. Of course, I say strongly I'm his daughter, but it's more than that. He actually hand built India's razor blade industry. Razor
Oh.
blades, as in shaving products.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's really, his story is a coming of age story for every single male between the 1950s to 2010 who shaved with those blades. So, it's
Oh.
a very important piece of history,
Mhm.
and, story about him, the product, and post partition India, frankly, and from an industrial point of view, that needs to be out there. But the way I am approaching this piece of nonfiction is quite different, because the storytelling style and the structure of the book is very much going to read like fiction. You see scenes from the life of this man when
Mhm.
he was young, middle aged, and in his older years. You see, how he basically built this product, built his factories, built his machines, the dysfunction with his family, the conflict and the rifts throughout with relationships on different levels, family relationships, business relationships, etc. And also a very, very flawed character, my late father. Mental health issues, misogyny, all sorts of, I mean, there's a lot of material to work with, which is why, it's such an, also, besides my personal interest in it, it makes it such an interesting story that should be, I think, brought to audiences like a piece of fiction. style wise. I'm not saying,
Right.
uh, you know, fictionalize it, but just
Yeah.
style
Not.
wise. Yes.
So my best wishes to you for this project, and
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. So if you're watching this video, I said at the start that this is also going to be an informative interview. So we are changing track right now, and so I'll ask Reenita because she has experience of doing a lot of things. So let's take some tips from her. So, first of all, you've co authored a book called Money Smart, right? Which is the Indian Woman's Guide to Wealth Management. So, for women or anybody, in fact, who's watching this, if you could give some tips on wealth management, because I think these tips are quite important. This is not something we are taught in schools and colleges. Yeah, we learn over the years, but always good to have some tips on this important thing.
Oh my gosh. Ronica, where do you start with? I honestly, if I'm the cop out answer, but which might actually be the best answer, is for that you should actually read the book because that's what it is about. It has specific tips. I think I'm going to give you a little bit more of a macro answer because a lot of women out there, and I think of myself growing up, we were just not on the money, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's not something that was taught at home. It was not something that was taught at school. And honestly, I am very against a woman sort of going out into the world, not knowing how to basically manage her money, a basic P&L. I mean, that's just, with the money I have, how do I spend it? How do I not spend it? What do I put away in savings, etc. Basic P&L, okay, basic personal finance,
Mhm.
but also what you have to save is not something that simply should be tucked under the mattress. Okay, no one does that these days. I
Right.
hope. I hope. But just something that is put into a bank account in a fixed deposit. Of course, doing that is better than doing nothing.
Mhm.
But with a little bit of education, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of awareness as to what is out there. I'm not saying go become a day trader, okay, and go crazy in the crypto markets because look at what's been happening recently, right? um, but at the very least, if you know about the kind of schemes that the government is um, incentivizing, I mean, that's a place that you can grow your money. If you know in very basic terms that, about the stock market and about basic index funds that invest in whatever infrastructure or a certain industry sector that is growing. You might say that the tech sector is growing, so there might be an index fund that invests in a basket of tech stocks. That is an area to think about. Or Mumbai is growing infrastructure, that might be an area to invest in. Okay, there are safer investments. You don't have to know sort of the stock price of one company versus the other company, the share price, etc. You don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
sort of keep an eye on it at such a detailed level, but at least at a basic level, through index products or funds or whatever it is, um, that is perhaps a better place over the long term
Yeah.
to grow your money rather than simply letting it sit, in a savings account. Fixed deposit certainly will give you some returns. Now, the one thing to be mindful of as I say all of this is if you are going to invest in stocks, in the stock market, you have got to understand that this is something that you need to be in for a while. Okay, there's no instant karma, there's no overnight quick fix. You're not going to be a millionaire tomorrow morning or next week. You've got to basically ride it out. Life, the stock market, like anything in life, is cyclical. There will be highs, there will be lows, and everybody gets scared when there's a low and there's a sell-off, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is what gambling's about. What I'm saying is do not gamble. Be in it for a longer term so that you can actually reap the benefits of your investment. So that's just like basic overview. There's so much more. This is such a deep topic, but I don't want to turn your interview into a personal finance session.
But thank you so much for this, because I personally know women, and I won't say women of my mother's generation, but my own friends who are not into investing at all. They see that if they invest in one thing and they see, oh, my money's gone down a bit, then they will become very reluctant to invest at all. They're still into that mode of saving, and not
Yes.
really letting their money grow by investing the right way and learning basically how to invest.
Yeah.
That's still important even for
Yeah.
our generation. Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Ronica, because look, saving is better than not saving,
Yeah.
firstly. And the thing is, it's very important to make your money work for you,
Yes.
right? Which means investing it to make it grow. And like anything, is we start out life knowing nothing about anything, right? And you're not going to know anything about anything unless you learn about it. So just like anything, if you approach it with the view that you can learn, and that there are, you don't have to pick up books and read them. You certainly can and should, but there's YouTube videos, there is every form of education coming to you, at you, available for you today, without you necessarily having to spend the money to enroll in a course. Of course you can do that as well, but there are free courses online. There
Yes.
are, there's just so much available, and I just think it is irresponsible, I'm going to say that, for a woman to just be completely disinterested or to live in fear. And usually, you're absolutely right, because that's usually what it is. It's fear. And
Yes.
it's in a sense, it ties right back to Operation Mom, because you have the single mother, and she needs to run her own life, right? She's been married or whatever, and she's now separated. She's no longer with her husband, but she needs to run life on her own. And in the USA, where I live, the divorce rate is something like 55%. If
Mhm.
that is true, then how can we as women sit back and say, "Oh no, I'm afraid, if I lose money and if it goes down." We have to take the interest. You owe it to yourself and whoever's dependent on upon you.
Yes, right, absolutely. And uh, yes, so one other thing that I would like you to talk about, to give information about basically, is you are the CEO of this story app, right, called Chapter by Episode. So I'd like you to tell about this platform, like what are the stories that are available, who can submit, and
Right.
how is this relevant to people who want to write and who want to make their voices heard? Yeah.
So glad you asked me that question. Thank you. Chapter by Episode started out as an alternative approach to publishing stories.
Mhm.
And, from the point of view and for the benefit of frustrated authors, right? So many authors out there, or people who want to have their stories brought, to their audiences and build audiences, um, get frustrated because it's not easy to get a book published,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And instead of spending life hankering after the top five publishers, and you may never get a book deal, or it may take you years, right? Why not create a different platform to allow authors to come in and tell their stories? So I created Chapter by Episode, which essentially is a digital platform for storytelling. And the structure of the story is in what we call a chat book, a chat book. So the book is divided into chapters. The chapters are divided into episodes, and
Mhm.
each episode is looks like a text chat between the two characters. So if you are Ronica is one character and Renita is another character, the way you see the story is through this conversation, the dialogue between Ronica and Renita
Okay.
chat. hence
Yeah.
chatbook, right? So it's a little bit like a screenplay, but not
Mhm.
exactly. But it's very much dialogue with narrative wrapped around it. We did a bunch of research into the Gen Z and millennial audiences, and Gen Z
Yeah.
specifically. And this is a group that really actually likes to get their information through the phone. They like texting with their friends, they like chatting, and they actually do not read a whole
Yeah.
lot of long form books like you and I
Yeah.
and sort of everyone else probably who's watching this, right? Alas, I would love it if they'd read more. But so hence the chat structure was developed really to sort of cater to that audience.
Yes.
Um, and then the other thing was that the focus of the stories, the themes, the characters, the settings, it's very much about people of color, right?
Mm.
Traditionally, we see a lot of books published, stories published, media, film, etc., which have these sort of quintessential white characters, and there's
Right.
not a whole lot of space for people of color. I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who lives in North America, right, in the United States. And I really wanted that not to be the case.
Mm.
The one thing I will say is in the United States, when they talk about people of color, they're usually talking about Americans, and people of color issues in America. But when it comes to stories, people of color are everywhere in the world, right? Where they live and how they function extends well beyond the boundaries of America. So I really am looking for stories that are international, that will be a window into different cultures, that will, bring to audiences the fascinations of people all over the world, what happens all over the world. So we are absolutely looking for authors to add to the platform. We provide them this platform to bring their stories to their audiences. We will help them build their audiences. And we've got a few different monetization models. So, anyone who is interested, I suggest that you reach out. Please do reach out to us by email. The details are all on the chapterbyepisode.com website. Um, Check out the app, download the app, look at the style, look at the structure, and consider contributing. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. So if you're watching this and you know somebody who wants to write, or if you want to write yourself, do check that out. I'll be adding the link for the website, chapter by episode, and Renita's website as well in the description box. So do check both of them out. And okay, so you have this experience of starting and building organizations, right? You worked with startups. So, and you also provide insights on entrepreneur.com. So for women, I've seen that, for various different reasons, even when they want to start their businesses, they hesitate, because maybe fears that they they'll be judged um, more harshly than men. And of course, the statistics are not very encouraging for anybody who's starting out. And then this thing that how will you manage your household and your business, and then people making these kind of remarks about whether they have the capacity to do it. Capability has got nothing to do with gender, but we have these stereotypes, right? So women, even when they want to do something, they a lot of times hesitate in starting out. So is there any advice or any message that you can give to women who really want to start their businesses, to just inspire them or encourage them, since you've done this work yourself?
Oh, goodness, Ronica. Very loaded question. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said women are questioned, do they have the capacity to do it? Nobody
Yeah.
talks about capability because, that has nothing to do with it. But yet, do you have the capacity to do it? And that is crazy. I mean, women are so capable, more capable, incredibly capable of running the ship, running the house, running the business, running anything, operations, being the chief operations officer of life, you know. And for them not to do this, for them not to become entrepreneurs, for them not to start businesses is an injustice to themselves and to society at large. Some
Yes.
of the most successful companies are women run companies, for profit, non profit, cottage industries, you name it, right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm just going to outline an example also. This is totally different. This is not a business example, but an industry example where women have been sort of stereotyped over the years, and that is in hoteling, in
Yes.
the hotel management industry. The head of housekeeping in the housekeeping department, that's the woman's area, right? Whereas other aspects of hotel operations can be sort of more unisex or male, female, whatever it is. But housekeeping has always traditionally been, you know, the women's area. Now, here's the thing, I've got sort of this, I don't know, twofold view on this. On one hand, yeah, that's pretty sexist. It's not as if to say, men shouldn't know how to make the beds or, do what is required in housekeeping or manage it. I mean, it's absolutely necessary, quintessential, sort of basic human functioning for anyone. I don't care what gender you are, right? Then again, the other view I have on this is it really takes a woman to come in and clean things up. And that's what housekeeping is, right? Who's going to go into a hotel if the room isn't made up and the beds aren't made and, things aren't, clean and the bathroom hasn't been cleaned? Like, no one. Those are the hotels. You're never going to go there. You want to stay the
Yeah.
heck away, right?
Right.
But I mean, when you look at the fact that, if those jobs were not traditionally sort of female jobs, maybe we would have never had that level of, housekeeping in a hotel. So it really, really goes to show. Um, but I think this extends to operations at large, and that's where the businesses come in, because it's
Mm-hmm.
running the housekeeping, running the hotel, running the life, running the business, running the ship. Like I said, women who have an idea for a business absolutely need to pursue it. And there are incentives for women. There are specific kinds of bank loans for women, specific kinds of funds that want to invest in women owned businesses. The opportunities are absolutely there. Starting a business for anyone is not easy, male, female, anything, right? But there are so many incentives out there for women to build really strong, well run ships. So I think my basic and best piece of advice would be, please do not hold yourself back. Please do not doubt yourself. Please do not think about capacity versus capability. You are absolutely capable, and the world needs you, the world wants you. So we are rooting for you. I am certainly rooting for every single woman owned business out there.
Thank you for your inspiring words. And anything else that you'd like to share, or any message at all that you'd like to give?
In terms of women owned businesses or in
No, no, no.
general?
Anything in general, anything else that you have in mind that you'd like to talk about, or uh, any of your works, upcoming works, maybe that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I, like, when we started out talking, I said, I love living in my fictional world. And honestly, that's where I choose to live most of the day. I would love to get feedback from anyone out there who is interested in fantasy fiction. As I had mentioned a little bit earlier, I am working on a YA fantasy fiction series. What's interesting about this particular project is that I've actually written, I have 7 books in the series. I've written book 1 and book 2, but they're in manuscript form. They're not published yet. However, book 1 is an audio series. It is a podcast. It's called Shadow Realm. It's out there. wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple or Spotify or Ghana or any of the platforms out there. And it really is quite different from Operation Mom. Quite different. As much as this is a female and female heavy book, Shadow Realm and the Arya Chronicles series is very male boy, teen boy sort of superhero, if you will. The Draw is Vedic mythology. So this is a contemporary story about an ethnic Indian boy in San Francisco who falls through a fault and finds himself in the land of, well, book one, in the land of the Ramayana, and how he needs to learn to vanquish the demons in the shadow realm in order to learn how to deal with the demons back in
Mhm.
his own ordinary world, right? The bullies in the schoolyard, or so forth, the various demons in his own ordinary world, his real life. So Shadow Realm is a project that is very close to my heart. I've been working on it. I think on some level, it would be right to say for many years. And there's a lot of interest in the subsequent audio series. We are in pre-production right now for season 2. And the books are, will be out at some point. I still haven't figured out, who's going to publish them yet. That's part of my active work these days. But I would love for you to check it out. The website is thearyachronicles.com, thearyachronicles.com. And you'll find Shadow Realm, which is book one there, both the podcast as well as all of the information about the upcoming series as well.
Great. So I'll add this website as well. Do check that out. And I'll be adding the Amazon links for Operation Mom and Money Smart. So do check them out. If Money Smart, I would recommend that you do have a look at it. And I'll also be adding the link for my review on Operation Mom. It's going to be there on my uh, book review blog, which is ronikavahi.blogspot.com. The exact link you'll find in the description box, of course. And also do check out my new YouTube channel. It's called Ronika Vahi's Academy. There I teach English through Hindi, and I also provide tips and strategies for language learning. So do check that out. And if you like this video, please do like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Thank you, Reenita, once again for taking out the time for this. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Ronika. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you. I really appreciate the time that you have taken today.
Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.